We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
Welcome to Conspiracy Corner Podcast, everyone. This is Abe, your host. I usually like to start with just kind of like a little how I'm doing, what's been up. Took a little break here recently. Just kind of needed it. I was putting out episodes back to back, and not that I don't enjoy doing this, it's just I don't want to burn myself out on it. You know what I'm saying? I feel like even something you love doing, if you do it too much, you can kind of burn yourself out on it, and it kind of loses that specialness, I guess. But yeah, this is Merry Christmas to anyone listening. This should be out today. I don't see why not. I haven't had time. I had thought about planning like a Christmas episode, maybe something like the pagan roots of Christianity or Christmas, or like maybe an episode on Krampus, which is the counterpart to Saint Nick, maybe an episode on the historical Saint Nicholas. But I've just been so busy with work, and honestly, on days off, I've just been enjoying my days off, you know. But that's about it, really. We do have some breaking news this week. Normally I try to do a funny little voice to make it a little more, I guess, brighten up the darkness in the world. But this news is crazy. So this COVID bill that has come out is like 5,500 pages. They handed this bill. Oh, they didn't hand it, by the way. They carted it to each individual who needs to sign it. That's how big this bill is. They had to use little carts to push them around. And then they expect these people to read this bill in a night, which is mathematically impossible. I was listening. Somebody was doing the math on it. You'd have to read like 22 pages in 9 minutes. Something insane like that, which is like impossible. I was telling my mother-in-law today on the phone, you know, like a comic book is like 24 pages, and that's not even full-length text. That's just a comic book, just random little paragraphs here and there and sound effects noises. It takes me about 45 minutes, maybe an hour sometimes to read a comic book. Like, and you're expecting these politicians to read this overnight and then get up, you know, ass crack of dawn and sign it, not knowing what they're signing. Trump put out a speech, you know, he's like, this bill is ridiculous. It's proposing like millions of dollars to multiple other countries. Like, No, I'm sorry. We need to be taking care of America. America first. Like, no offense to the rest of the world. I know you guys are struggling too, but no, we come first when it comes to my country. I worry about my country before someone else's. Sorry. That's how I roll. Um yeah, fucking Smithsonian Museum, which isn't even open. Apparently millions of dollars was sent to them. Like, don't even get me started on the Smithsonian and how evil and corrupt that you know organization is, as far as like lying to us about our own history, lying to us about who and where we came from, and what else was out there, as far as like the giants and the Nephilim. There's a whole cover up on that, but just ridiculous. Figured I'd share it with you. And it's Nancy Pelosi's behind all that crap, so that tells you it all right there. But we'll get back into the episode. Alright, this is kind of like a part 2 episode. I will put a card at the end of the video so you can click on part 1 if you want, if you wish to, if this is something you're into. But I didn't want to pass this up. I could have left part 1 as part 1, but this gets so weird and bizarre. Yeah, just listen. It's crazy. The first section of this, because it's kind of like a two-parter, I'm taking from multiple sources. First section of this is about self-mummification, which is, I guess, like a spiritual practice in certain areas. And people actually turn themselves into mummies while they're living. And it's insane. So we like to cover, like, paranormal, spirituality, conspiracy theories, and I thought this definitely fit into the strangeness of our world. This is how to become a mummy. Put simply, mummification is the full or partial preservation of soft tissues, accomplished by arresting the process of cell disintegration and bacterial growth that begins soon after death. The many ways to become a mummy share two characteristics: the absence of liquid water and an environment free of, or at least hostile to, bacteria. So honestly, as weird as this sounds, it kind of reminds me, I just thought of like beef jerky right there. Like Mingwa. This isn't product placement, it just reminded me of Mingwa. Natural mummification. Freezing. Bacteria cannot survive without liquid water. Keeping a body below freezing halts microbial activity. Hermetic environments. If a burial chamber or coffin is sealed tightly enough, water and foreign microbes cannot get in, leaving the corpse largely untouched. So basically, like those sarcophagus, the big stone coffins they put on the dead pharaohs and stuff. Desiccation. In extremely dry environments, moisture leaves the body rapidly without water. The bacteria that usually begins to eat away at tissues are unable to survive, and the formation of cell and organ destroying enzymes is halted, leaving the body intact, if a bit shriveled. Natural anaerobic environments. Some cultures in Europe buried bodies in nearby peat bogs. The oxygen-free environment kept microbes out as well. Artificial mummification. Although practices differ across cultures, most methods of artificial mummification involved removing the internal organs and replacing them with grasses or linens to recreate the body's original shape. So they've actually, you can watch it on documentaries and stuff. It's kind of wild. They got like these weird tools that they used to, like, one's like a hook that goes up your nose and it scrambles your brains and then they pull it all out. It's kind of gross, but I don't know. I've always found it interesting since I was a kid. Um, the body was then closed up and usually treated with some sort of chemical agent. This could be a salt solution, as in the case of the Egyptians, or mercury or some other mixture. Finally, the preparers wrapped the body in cloth and placed it in a sealed coffin. So this is where this article gets crazy, and I had to share it with you on here. The ultimate do-it-yourself self-mummification. This rare type of mummification was practiced mostly by Buddhist monks who attempted to attain divinity by purposefully preserving their bodies. The process was long and painful and involved surviving solely on a diet of tree bark, pine needles, nuts, and berries for up to a decade. So eating tree bark and pine needles, that's up to a decade. So like 10 years you can live off that apparently. The ascetic diet of slow starvation eliminated body fat, which tends to decay faster than other types of tissue, and build up chemical compounds toxic to bacteria associated with decomposition. Just before death, the individual would bury himself alive with the help of other monks. Yeah, I had to share that, dude. Like, I don't know, Buddhism, I know, like, I've studied little bits here and there. I would like to do some of the practices, like, as far as, like, meditation, yoga, stuff like that. But people forget that it is a religion just like any other religion. And I know I'll probably piss people off by saying it, but Buddhism has its crazy side just as much as like Islam or Judaism or Christianity. Like, I guess when I always thought it was like the most pure, like peaceful, like positive religion, and then found out like several years ago they actually have like a hell, which they call Dayu, and I was like, oh man, that kind of ruined it for me. Um, Watching documentaries, like looking at like extreme Buddhism with like monks like sitting in temples and meditating for hours and hours and hours, and if they fall asleep, someone will come by, kind of like a nun, and hit them with a stick, and it's like, that's not the way to enlightenment, bro. Like, I don't know. Some of it can be extreme, like the celibacy, like meditating all day long. Like, I don't know. I feel like you're not living. That's kind of so extreme to me, to reach nirvana. It's like you might. No one knows what happens when we die, bro. You might be kind of wasting your entire life, and come to find out, you never reached nirvana, and this was the only life you got, and you just wasted it, through suffering. Like, I don't know. That and self-mummification, man, that's insane, to bury yourself alive and eat tree bark. And I had to share it with you all, though. It was just so crazy. But I do have another little part talking about mummies. This is taken from a book by Ian McMahon. It's called, the book is Secrets of the Pharaoh. It's just a fragment that I found interesting. Uncover the Timeless Mysteries of Ancient Egypt is the subtitle. But this was written, let's see here, 1998, so it's kind of older. But yeah, I got it marked in here. I wanted to share it with you for this mummy episode. I didn't have time to fit it in the last one, so we'll put it in this one. So this is taken out of page 58 of the book. Putting mummies to use. The custom of mummifying the dead continued in Egypt from the time of the earliest pharaohs, right through the Roman period, a time span of over 3,000 years. It finally ended only with the rise of Christianity in Egypt. Even then, the memory of the custom remained, along with cemeteries and caves filled with many thousands of wrapped and embalmed bodies. Because the resins with which they were coated turned them black, they came to be called mummies, from a Persian word, Mamiya, which means bitumen or pitch. This name led to one of the more peculiar sidelights of Egyptian history. Persian physicians in medieval times claimed that Mamiya, that is, the mineral pitch, sometimes found oozing from rocks in oil-rich regions, cured cuts, mended broken bones, and healed stomach ailments. The problem with Mamiya was it was scarce and expensive. Okay, this is where it gets weird. If it wasn't weird enough with the self-mummification ritual, now it gets even weirder. So, blackened resins found on the outside and inside of mummies looked much the same, and the names were the same. So why not use those instead? Yeah. Soon the bodies of long dead Egyptians were being ground up and sold as medicine. By the 16th century, powdered mummy was an important export of Egypt and a standard item at the apothecary shops throughout Europe. The demand became so great that it eventually outran the supply. Some dealers found a profitable solution to this problem. They started manufacturing their own mummies. They bought fresh corpses from the prisons and hospitals, stuffed them with pitch, and wrapped them in old rags. After a few weeks of aging under the Egyptian sun, the new mummies were powdered and sold as the genuine article. Eventually, word of this scam spread. The news killed off the trade in mummies. Patients may have been ready to swallow the dust of people who had died 2000s the year before, but they drew the line at those who had died only a few months before, of who knew what loathsome disease. So how gross and disgusting is that it literally became a medicine that you would consume? Yeah, it says that they would swallow the flesh of mummies, 2,000-year-old flesh, for medical purposes, or use it as a salve for cuts. So this is why I wanted to definitely put this episode out, because I ran out of time on the first episode, but I'm like, man, I've got to make a part 2 for this. Like, the whole self-mummification thing was so bizarre, and then people eating 2,000-year-old flesh of mummies. I was like, yeah, this is definitely going to be an episode. So, but even after Europeans stopped taking mummies as medicine, however, they did continue to collect them. No wealthy traveler making the grand tour could return home from Egypt without a stuffed crocodile to hang on the wall, a selection of scarabs, and pots to display in a curio cabinet, and an occupied mummy case. Putting pots and stuff in your cabinets, I don't know, that just sounds like bringing home a djinn. Like, there's all sorts of stories and stuff of Iraqi war veterans and soldiers coming back home with, like, Middle Eastern items, and next thing they know, their house is haunted as hell because it's like they brought like a djinn home with them. Yeah, we'll have to do an episode on the djinn. It's crazy. They're different than demons, and they're different than ghosts. They're like basically what became the genie, or known as the genie. I don't know. It's kind of neat stuff. Once home, some even invited friends over to watch the mummy being unwrapped. These mummies usually ended up in the basement of a local museum or disappeared altogether, along with whatever knowledge of ancient times they might have given us. In the Victorian era, Thomas Cook began offering organized tours of Egypt and the Holy Land. Well, let's talk about that though. The unwrapping parties. They used to do unwrapping parties. That actually was like a common pastime, during that time. And I know, as bizarre as it sounds, like as destructive as it is to like ancient history, and God knows what mummies they unwrapped that like were famous people and they just ruined them. It would be, I ain't gonna lie, there's a part of me though that's like, it would be kind of cool to watch and go to. Like, I could imagine just sitting there, like, having like a gin martini, smoking a cigarette, dressed in a suit, watching this like mummy be unwrapped on someone's kitchen table. Like, I don't know. Sounds kind of exciting. Like, I'd be taking pictures. In the Victorian era, Thomas Cook began offering organized tours of Egypt and the Holy Land. A high point was a guided visit to a tomb where a mummy would be found, quote unquote, then taken back to the hotel to be unrolled after dinner. Even if these excursions took place only every 2 weeks, for only 20 years, they would have used up to 500 mummies, because, of course, once unwrapped, the mummies were considered to be of no use to anyone. Their fate could have been still worse. At one point in the 19th century, an American paper manufacturer signed a contract to buy tons of linen wrappings from mummies to be made into a rag content paper. Wow, so just taking, this is destruction of history at its worst. Like, taking thousands of wrappings from mummies and turning it into basically just rag content paper. That's insane. No mention was made of what would be done with the mummies themselves, but it was easy to imagine. The deal eventually fell through after the rumor started that the paper could spread diseases from ancient times. The widespread disrespect for the remains of the long dead inspired Mark Twain in his satirical travel book, The Innocents Abroad, to describe an Egyptian train trip this way. The fuel they used for the locomotives is composed of mummies 3,000 years old, purchased by the ton or by the graveyard for that purpose. Sometimes one hears the profane engineer call out pettishly, "Don't these plebeians, they don't burn a cent passed out a king." That's crazy. Using them as fuel to fuel the fire of the locomotive. But I don't know. It's crazy. Let me know in the comments what you think. We have a little bit of time, so I usually, if I have enough time, I like to do a Saint of the Day segment, So December 25th, 2020 is, ironically, Jesus Christ. When Tinker Bell is dying in the play Peter Pan, the audience is asked to clap if it believes in fairies. The implication is clear. The audience doesn't clap, Tinker Bell will die. Of course, the audience always comes through, and Tink always goes on to do whatever it is fairies do. At times we act as if Tinker Bell and God are alike. With our rather egocentric points of view, we behave as if God needs us. God doesn't need us. We need God, but God doesn't need us. Even if the entire universe stopped believing, God would still exist. That doesn't mean we aren't important to God. God loves us, and love is a good deal more valuable than need. It's amazing that God, who created everything, loves each of us as individuals. God loves us so much, as Christians have believed for nearly 2,000 years. God sent Jesus to live among us, to teach us, and to put a human face on God's love. Even those who do not accept Jesus Christ as God made man agree he is the most influential person ever to have lived. Most of the facts of his life are uneventful. The effects of his life are overwhelming. Jesus' message is simple to state, but often takes a lifetime to comprehend. Love the Lord your God with your whole heart, and your mind, and your whole soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. The saints in this book dedicated their lives to living out those principles. They ask each of us to do the same. Am I a life of love? When I choose love, I choose all. And that's taken from 365 Saints, your daily guide to the wisdom and other wonder of their lives, written by Woodine Koenig Bricker. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you all had or have a Merry Christmas. Let me know what you got for presents in the comments. But you all have a good day. Love you all. Thanks for tuning in.
We are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, opposed to secret oaths, opposed to secret proceedings, secret proceedings. No official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to